All right, good afternoon. I'm Chris DiPentima, the President and CEO of the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and really looking forward to the business update from our good friends down at Sikorsky and Paul Lemmo. We've got obviously a lot happening here in Connecticut, folks coming back from the Paris Air Show who are involved in manufacturing on the defense and commercial side, and no player bigger or more important in Connecticut than Sikorsky and everything that's going on, not only in Stratford, Bridgeport, but all the work they do for our country and across the world. So I'm very pleased to have Paul here with us to share with you all a business update on where Sikorsky's been, where we are today, and where Sikorsky's going. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Paul. And after Paul's presentation, we'll be happy to take some Q&A. Just put any questions you have in the Q&A box on the bottom. And don't use the chat feature, use the Q&A feature. And Paul is gracious enough to spend some time to answer those questions after his presentation. So Paul, great to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, as I always tell you, for everything you and the Sikorsky family do for Connecticut, for our country, and for our world. And really looking forward to the update today.
I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. You and I had chatted a few months ago, and I said, with all that's transpired this year for Sikorsky, I thought it would be good to update CBIA members, and many of whom are our suppliers, just to see where we're at and where we're going. So I hope you find today's chat informative, and I really look forward to taking some of your questions. We're really proud to call Connecticut home. We always have been, and we're going to be here for certainly the foreseeable future. It's been a great relationship with the state and the local communities here, with all the mayors and elected officials who so significantly support us day in and day out. We appreciate that. And as I've said publicly many times, I've managed businesses for Lockheed Martin, in different areas of the country, and this has been the most business-friendly state that I've been in. And so we really appreciate that support. I'm sure many of you have seen earlier this year the coverage of the Army's decision on the Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft program. And obviously that was a big disappointment to us here at Sikorsky. We've had our debriefs. We filed a protest, as you know, because we thought that there was a misunderstanding in terms of how we had responded to some of the Army's questions. The GAO took the full 100 days to consider our protest. Unfortunately, they did not rule in our favor. And after considering our options, we decided to move on as really the best course of action. We still have significant business with the Army. We look forward to them being a customer for us, for many, many more years to come. And you'll hear in my talk, that we're very confident that the Blackhawk is going to remain a mainstay of our product lines for many decades, given that the Army is going to continue to fly that. As well, we are continuing to compete on the other program in future vertical lift called FARA, and we'll talk more about that. We have moved on from that. We're taking those lessons learned, we're applying them across our business, and again, as you'll see, we have a bright outlook for our future. I think many of you know, and you can see on the logo here on the cover slide, that we're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year. And we're so proud that that many, if not all those years, have been right here in Connecticut. And, we've been having celebrations throughout the year. The official date of our anniversary was March 5th, but we have had several celebrations, including one just last week at the Paris Air Show. We've been an innovation company since Igor Sikorsky founded us, and we continue that culture here today at Sikorsky, and with our partners from around the state of Connecticut, very happy to continue innovating and developing new products. So we want to make sure that our employees, our partners, our neighbors and customers reflect on this milestone with us and celebrate this milestone with us. And so I hope you won't mind me showing just a short video to reflect on that.
As this unconventional craft settled quietly to a spot on the ramp, The historians of flight may well have noted that the first successful American helicopter had descended from the realm of aeronautical speculation to a very material place on the flight line of the Army Air Forces.
Our founder, Igor Sikorsky, came to America inspired with dreams about designing and building aircraft for a nascent industry. 100 years ago, he created the innovation business we now know as Sikorsky, a Lockheed Martin company. From humble beginnings, he and generations of Sikorsky employees built on those early ideas, creating an entirely new field of aviation with the first practical helicopter and increasingly advanced versions in the decades that followed. This invention, in the capable hands of air crews around the world, has become a powerful tool for saving lives and performing missions in the most dangerous conditions. Our customers' missions motivate us to continue innovating and improving our aircraft and how we build them. For 100 years, we've been pioneering flight solutions that bring people home everywhere, every time. That mission inspires us every day, and it always will.
Well, that's some pretty incredible footage, and I hope you agree. It's kind of interesting to see the long history that this company's had. You know, there aren't many companies that can say they've been around 100 years, and it definitely takes a lot of innovation and change to maintain a company through the ups and downs that our economy and that the world environment presents to us. So let me start out with just a quick once around Sikorsky. You know, we have 5 different market segments that we operate under. Army and Air Force Systems, which is where we produce the Blackhawk helicopter and our international variant called the S-70I, as well as the Combat Rescue Helicopter, which is for the U.S. Air Force. Under our global commercial and military systems, we produce the S-92 and S-76 commercial aircraft. And of course, the S-92 doubles also as an aircraft that we sell to the government, best known in the form of the VH-92 for the presidential helicopter program. Future Vertical Lift is obviously the program that we've been competing on. We did not win the first part of that, but we're competing on the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, or FARA, and continue to have a significant investment going into that program. As well, we're offering what we're calling the International Twin, a twin because it's a 2-engine solution for several international customers who have come forward and expressed interest in X2 and in that technology, believing that it will meet the capabilities that they're looking for in a next generation fast helicopter. So we continue to be encouraged by that solution, that even though the first competition didn't go our way, we're seeing interest in the X2 outside of the United States. Then we have our Marine Corps systems with the CH-53K, and this is really the heart of what Sikorsky is going to be doing in the next 10 years or so. We're ramping the full rate production on the CH-53K program. And just for comparison, you know, one CH-53K from an hours in our shop is equivalent to 8 to 10 Blackhawks. So just gives you an idea. While we may not be producing, you know, thousands of CH-53Ks, the hundreds that we produce are going to represent a significant number of Blackhawks from a work content perspective, because they are very large, very complex aircraft. We continue to support the Echo model, which is still out in service with the Marine Corps. Those will be retiring as we bring the 53K online. And then, of course, the presidential helicopter I alluded to. We're actually going to be wrapping up production on the presidential helicopter next year. About this time, we should be delivering the final aircraft. And they're already in service for some of the presidential missions. So right now there's a mix of the new aircraft and the old aircraft. And over the next year or so, we expect the VH-92 to take over completely. And then Maritime and Mission Systems. So this is our MH-60 Romeo Seahawk aircraft. These are for the U.S. Navy and international navies. We're seeing a great resurgence of sales for this internationally, with a number of countries coming online and purchasing the aircraft. We're also in the middle of building new cabins for the Coast Guard so that they can service life extend their MH-60 Jayhawk helicopters. I'm very proud of that mission and the work that we do there. And then we have the CH-148 Cyclone, which is a naval helicopter for Canada, which is based on the S-92 aircraft as well. So those are the programs we have. You can see we've got, we serve over 40 nations around the world, many different customers. And we have just over 12,000 employees, about 12,400 employees worldwide. Of course, close to 8,000 of those are here in Connecticut. So this is our home base, as I've mentioned. So let me shift gears a little bit now that we've kind of covered a little once over on the business and talk a little bit about the supply chain. This has emerged as a big challenge for us over the last 18 months in that we have seen lead times growing from our suppliers. We've seen price increases, and more importantly, but detrimental to our business, we've seen late deliveries starting to occur on products that we need to build our aircraft. And it is having an impact here in Stratford on our final assembly where, we've been delivering some aircraft late to contract, unfortunately, for our customers. It's everything across the supply chain on microelectronics. Obviously, there's a high demand and there's less supply in the world right now. There's some production constraints. Similarly, in raw materials, with what's going on in Ukraine, that's presented some raw material challenges for titanium and other metals that are obviously used heavily in the aviation industry that we've had to work around. We've also seen a lot of labor turnover in our supply base, which has caused them to, kind of lose the recipe on some things that they've made for us that now we're seeing some, poor quality or late delivery happening from those suppliers. And then the lead time's growing. So, if it used to be an 18-month lead time, it's now 2 to 3 years. If it was 6 months, it's a year. So all the assumptions that we ran our business by and that we thought we knew about the supply base and the predictability have really gone away over the last couple of years. And like I said, we are trying to work with our suppliers. We put teams out if they need the help in any different area. We're happy to come help, and that goes for any suppliers here in Connecticut. I know we've reached out to a few of you that we are here to help. All through COVID, we put accelerated payments out to our supply base to make sure that they were financially healthy, and we would continue to do that wherever it's needed. But we're also here to provide technical support, program management support, operations support. If we can help you work through some challenges that you have, please let us know, because the quicker you get back on schedule and quality, then we can do the same for our customers, and that will keep the orders coming in for new aircraft. So we're all in this together, and that's a little bit of an ask for any of you who are suppliers to us or who would like to be suppliers to us. We want to have an open, transparent relationship about any challenges you have and how we might be able to help, because you really drive our business. It's just so critical. I want to touch on our support from the Connecticut delegation. Again, you've heard me talk about this many times. Another example, I was able to meet with Governor Lamont and the delegation from Connecticut over at the Paris Air Show. We actually recorded a video together to talk about what he was doing at the show and the conversations that his economic team was having. Of course, they were out there trying to recruit more business for the state of Connecticut, for suppliers both in the U.S. and international suppliers who may be looking to do business in the U.S. And we chatted about that on the video, so I hope some of you get a chance to watch that. You see a few other photos here. We had a chance to celebrate earlier this year the delivery of our 5,000th Hawk of any variant, whether it be a Blackhawk, a Seahawk, or a Jayhawk. But 5,000 is a pretty incredible number for any aircraft to be on that kind of a run. And we continue beyond that. And we think we have a long future ahead of us with those. So again, appreciate all the delegation, local and state and congressional that turned out for that. And then, of course, our celebration of the legislation that, where we committed to a certain level of jobs and supply-based support for the next 10 to 20 years here in Connecticut, in exchange for some support from the state to help us be more competitive on some of our future bids. We really appreciate that. We'll be able to take advantage of that, hopefully on the FARA program as we compete for that. So, again, a lot of support from the state, and I know that they support each and every one of CBIA members as well, I'm sure, as you need help. And that's good to see for all of us to build an ecosystem here in Connecticut where we can be successful serving our customers. So just to talk a little bit more about the Hawk program and the fact that we've delivered 5,000 Hawks. A couple of things I'll point out here. Obviously, the Blackhawk is the biggest portion of this aircraft family, if you will. And since we did not win the Future Vertical Lift program that we talked about earlier, the Army has come out and been very clear on a few things. Number one, that the program that we didn't win is not a one-for-one replacement for the Blackhawk. And we believe that even when we were bidding the program, and it's good to hear them reinforce that, particularly because we didn't win. So it's not a one-for-one replacement. They're going to continue to fly the Blackhawk helicopter until 2060 or 2070. So, 40 to 50 years from now, these aircraft will be flying. And with that means they're going to need to modernize the aircraft. You can't buy aircraft today and not have to retrofit, recapitalize, and modernize those assets. And so, we're looking at hopefully more production from the Army beyond 2027. If you recall, we have a multi-year contract right now that ends in 27. So theoretically, that would be the end of Army production. But we certainly envision foreign military sales to continue beyond that. And we're hopeful, we don't have a requirement yet, but we're hopeful that the Army will identify some additional production beyond 2027 for them as well. And I think we'll learn more about that over the next 12 months. In addition to that, we know that the Army is discussing, what kind of modernization they'll need for these platforms. We're making a significant investment in Sikorsky to get ready for that and to also show them what's possible on the platform, what's technically possible to upgrade the platform. So a lot of activity going on there, and I feel pretty good about our position with the Army to continue the Blackhawk legacy. And then I'll tell you, having just come back from the Paris Air Show last week and meeting with customers from all over the world, there is a significant demand internationally for the Blackhawk helicopter. I think people are seeing what's transpired in Ukraine and operationally how helicopters have been used, where they've been successful, where they have not, and what's required of a helicopter to be survivable in that environment. And I think they understand that the most survivable utility helicopter out there is the Blackhawk. That, some of these other helicopters that are on the market as utility helicopters really started as a civil commercial helicopter that were, converted to a military helicopter. The Blackhawk has been built and designed from the ground up to be a military helicopter. And we hear countless stories from pilots who have been in combat, been shot up and been able to fly the aircraft home. And, it is a survivable platform. And we have a lot of testimonials to that fact. And I think customers around the world recognize that. And that's why they're coming to us to buy the aircraft. And, back to my prior chart where I talked about the supply chain, why that's important is because unfortunately right now our lead times are growing to get a Blackhawk. If you come in and want to order a Blackhawk today, it's probably going to take about 3 years to get it. We used to be at about 24 months. We'd like to get back there, and we need the help of the supply chain to get back there. If we can get some of our long lead materials quicker, then we could certainly build the aircraft quicker. It's really the long lead material and some of the forgings and castings that have to be procured that take a long time to get. So again, asking for help from the supply chain to consolidate the lead times and get us to be able to go to market faster and win more business quicker. So that's kind of just a little bit about the Blackhawk and its future. Again, a lot of upgrades we're looking at, and also new missions. You know, you see the Firehawk picture on here for CAL FIRE. That continues to be a seller. I mean, as you look around our country and around the world, and some of the environmental consequences we're seeing and the wildfires, there is an increasing demand for these firefighting helicopters. And so we will continue to actively market those, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. So I wanted to go back to Future Vertical Lift again and talk a little bit more about what the future holds for us here. I've talked about the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft Program, or FARA. So that Raider X competitive prototype, which you see in the upper right-hand side, that's actually being assembled at our West Palm Beach facility in Florida. That's where we assemble all of our prototypes, no matter what the aircraft is, and then eventually they get built here in Stratford. So that aircraft is our prototype that we're going to fly and demonstrate to the Army. That's 95% complete. We're basically waiting on an engine from General Electric. They're the engine provider as dictated by the Army for this aircraft. And they're slated to deliver that engine later this year. And then we're hoping to be in flight test next year. What it will eventually look like is the picture in the lower left titled Raider X. That's what the concept looks like and what we'll be flying next year. I want to mention a little bit about the S-97 Raider. Those of you who follow Sikorsky will know that we built that aircraft as a demonstrator back in 2015. It started flying. It's been flying ever since. And that aircraft is a great demonstrator for the Army of what our Raider X offering will be. It's about 80% of the size of Raider X. And so we've been out there flying that extensively this year and demonstrating to the Army the missions that FARA will fly and how this aircraft can fulfill those missions. So we're really excited to have such a high op tempo on flying that aircraft, and the fact that we have one. Our competitor does not have one. They're building a competitive prototype just like we are, and they won't be flying until we do next year with their competitive prototype. But we just happen to have the S-97 Raider, which Sikorsky invested in and built many years ago. That's a good, as I said, a good demonstrator for what this will be. And then I mentioned earlier about that international twin and the interest we continue to see internationally, despite the fact that we weren't selected for the first Future Vertical Lift program. That hasn't dampened the interest around the world in this concept of X2, the compound coaxial helicopter with a pusher propeller. It's a very novel design. It's got some unique features in terms of speed and maneuverability and survivability that we certainly think, and I think others agree, provide a discriminator on the battlefield. So really, really proud of that. Let me move from here and talk about the long-term future. So we see three trends that are going to be important to our business here at Sikorsky. One we've been investing in for quite some time is autonomy. You would have seen some videos and news reports of us flying a Blackhawk without any pilots on board, so uninhabited. We've done that several times, demonstrating for the Army the ability of an uninhabited Blackhawk to conduct, for example, a logistics mission. And that's what you see in that picture on the left-hand side on the chart. Last year, we participated in an Army experiment where the Blackhawk flew uninhabited for an 80-mile mission with a sling-loaded pallet to deliver cargo to a theoretical, battlefield. And we're getting a lot of interest, a lot of traction in that. But we're not just looking at the Army. I mean, we're marketing our autonomy solutions to every one of our customers, in addition to fixed-wing customers as well. This solution isn't just specific to a helicopter. It can be put on a fixed-wing solution. So we have some commercial cargo carriers in this country who would like to go down the single-pilot operation on their cargo aircraft, and they are working with us to see how our autonomy solutions can solve that problem and help them get down to a single pilot operation. So some interesting dual use capability there. The other big one, and I'm sure you've heard about this, is electrification. We've obviously all seen it in automobiles. There are many, many electric cars on the road now, and electric motors are becoming very power dense. Batteries are becoming, much more powerful. So that is enabling solutions for the aviation industry to be electrified. And what we see, predominantly, as you know, our customers are military, although we do commercial business. But as we look to our military customer, it's not clear that we'll go all electric here in the next 10 or 15 years. I don't know that for the size and weight class that we typically build helicopters for, that you're going to have enough battery power or the ability to recharge it out on the battlefield anytime soon. So what we see is hybrid electric, which, if you recall, was kind of the first step for automobiles. And we're working on a hybrid electric demonstration program in partnership with General Electric to basically build and demonstrate a hybrid electric aircraft that would be capable of dual use, both passenger carry for civilians, but also, cargo and passenger carry for military utilization. And that's kind of where we see the sweet spot of this technology. As I said, hybrid electric, because it has to be operable on the battlefield. It can't be dependent upon, recharging, et cetera. But having that hybrid electric technology opens up the design space for a lot of different form factors for vertical lift. You see a picture of a traditional helicopter, but actually we don't envision building a traditional helicopter in a hybrid electric format. We envision something else that has multiple rotors and different capability to fly far and fast, perhaps on a wing. So more to follow on that. We're not revealing everything about our concept just yet, but we're pretty excited about it. We're making a big investment. We started a few years ago and are ramping that up. In addition, if you look to the right-hand side of the chart, you see the acronym VTOL, UAV, UAS. So that stands for vertical takeoff and landing, unmanned aerial vehicle, or unmanned aerial system. So there have been UAVs out there, fixed-wing UAVs, for decades, right? You all know about the Predator and the Reaper, played a big role in Iraq and Afghanistan. One of the things that we haven't had much of is a vertical takeoff and landing UAS. Something that, for example, could launch off the deck of a ship without a runway, so a smaller vessel. Today, we launch helicopters off those decks, but we don't have anything unmanned. The ones that have been out there just haven't really been able to fulfill the mission. They haven't been able to carry a lot of cargo or travel very far. So we're working on a concept, and this is actually a picture of the concept, called a rotor blown wing. It actually sits on its tail, launches vertically, and then flips over and flies like a fixed wing aircraft, but it's essentially just a wing. There's no vertical tail or anything. And we are designing and building. The one we're flying right now is all electric because it's small, so it has batteries. But we have a contract now from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency to scale this up to a larger size and build it as a hybrid electric demonstrator. So we're really excited about this. We see this fulfilling missions of either carrying some cargo or potentially in an intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance mode where it carries sensors to surveil the battlefield. So pretty exciting. Really, all these technologies are going towards providing our customers with improved range, improved speed, ease of logistics, safer aircraft, as well as direct operating savings from a cost perspective. Electrification takes out a lot of the mechanical moving parts in these aircraft, and so that will reduce the cost of operating the aircraft significantly, because those parts tend to wear out more frequently. But now that you have electric motors and so forth, those should be much more robust and last a lot longer. So definitely some new classes of aircraft in our future, and really in the industry's future. And we're not shying away from that. We definitely want to make sure that we're a participant in that. So that's why we're investing heavily. So I think that was perhaps my last slide. What I wanted to do was just sort of end with a video that talks about at least the autonomy portion of this slide that I'm just leaving now. So we'll roll that video quickly. So thanks again. Hope you enjoyed that video. Appreciate the time to chat with all of you, and really looking forward to taking some of your questions. So Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Hey, Paul, thanks a lot for that. That was really informative. I think it gives us all a good perspective of where we are today, but even more importantly, everyone always wants to know where we're going, right? And obviously you've got a huge supply chain here in the state, so it's good to know where the customer is going so that the suppliers can figure that out as well. So Paul, we've got in the Q&A, there was one note, maybe from a current supplier or not, about some folks who are working on some new materials and who should they get in touch with at Sikorsky about to discuss this potential replacement for aluminum. That sounds pretty progressive out there. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, sure. I don't know how you want to do it, but I'll get them in touch with probably start with our engineering team, really. Rather than the supply chain team, because it sounds like it's new, it's a new product, and we'll want to get our material science folks involved to evaluate it. But yeah, let's make that connection. So Chris, if you want, we can connect offline. I can provide you the contact information.
We'll do that, Paul. We'll grab their information and get it over to you guys. And then our good friend Rick Clary just asked about the 100th year anniversary video. I believe we have that on social media. We'll work with your folks to get that out on the CBIA website if it's not already there. I know our folks dropped in the article that we did. Paul, I should have raised it in the beginning, but I still have on my desk at all time the 5,000th delivery ceremony of the Hawk, and obviously what an amazing day that was. Not only for Sikorsky, the union was there, was a great partner with you all. The supply chain was there, our officials were there, the business community was there, and it was just a great celebration. You've had quite a few celebrations this year.
We have.
So Paul, okay, another question here. So let's start in order. How many Blackhawks do you think will be displaced by FLRAA, and how many Blackhawks would the Army then have?
Yeah, that's hard to say. They're actually going through right now for the next 3 or 4 months, sort of their fleet assessment, if you will. And they will come out and say, hey, we think we're going to buy this many of FLRAA, and we're going to retain this many Blackhawks in inventory. So I think today the number's around 2,000 Blackhawks in their inventory, probably between the Army and National Guard. And so I don't know yet. Honestly, don't have a good picture of that. I know what we were asked to bid in the contract, but they told us all along that was not an official number from the Army in terms of how many they wanted to build. And I will tell you that the number we were asked to bid was in the hundreds, not the thousands. So we're going to be watching and waiting to see that ourselves in terms of what that number turns out to be. So
okay,
more to follow. Yeah.
I didn't know if somebody unmuted there. So again, keep the questions coming in the Q&A. Paul, there's a couple great ones here, so I'm sure you'll enjoy this. What are the most important items you would like to see or source from the Connecticut supply base? I know when I was in manufacturing for 20 years, it was always cost, quality, delivery, relationships, but it had to be equal. So why don't you answer this question, but also kind of just level set, how many suppliers do you have in Connecticut? I know Sikorsky made that big commitment and you guys have achieved or exceeded the spend with the supply base in Connecticut, and then segue into what is the most important items that you would like to see from your supply base.
Yeah, sure. I didn't bring the numbers with me today, but I think we have about 240 to 250 suppliers across Connecticut. And I think our spend last year was over $300 million, probably higher than that. So it is a very significant supply base here in Connecticut. And we have, a number of critical companies here that support us. Yeah, listen, I mean, we need all three, right? Obviously cost, quality, delivery, but I think the most important thing is transparency. Sign up for what you commit. I mean, when we agree on a contract, then the cost is done, right? Usually they're fixed price contracts. So once we do that, then it's really all about meeting your commitments, delivering on the time frame that you committed to us to deliver. And that's where we need a lot of transparency. Listen, we understand that things happen, things come up. Same thing in our business here. When that happens, we expect early notification and a corrective action plan. What are you going to do about it to get back on track? If you need help from us, ask for help. But we can't have late surprises to find out, this week that we're not going to get 100 parts next week that are going to ripple through our next, 50 aircraft or so. So just early notification. We view our supply chain as partners, and I think partners, have frequent discussions. They communicate a lot, and they really share good and bad news, right? I mean, we can take the bad news. It doesn't get better with time. So the sooner you let us know, the better off we'll be. The other thing I would say is, you're thinking about the long term with the supply base. We'd like to understand, particularly for some of the larger ones, how are you modernizing and transforming your business along the digital lines? We're doing that here. We have extensive investments in digital transformation. And obviously we need to bring the supply chain along with us so that we can share, for example, CATIA files. CATIA is a CAD, program that we use to design our aircraft. We want to be able to share drawings through that, not to have to print it out and send it to you or do some other manipulation of the file. We'd love to have a seamless transfer of data between us so that your factories can operate almost seamlessly with ours. So I think as you think about your future, think about how you're going to line up on this digital transformation spectrum. We would be happy to share with you our roadmap and the kinds of tools we're investing in to see if that makes sense for you. So don't hesitate to ask us about that, and we can certainly share.
So I've been down there several times, Paul. You guys got a ton of resources that you offer very transparently to the supply chain to really help them out. Again, whether they encounter a problem, let you know early, or in this case, long-term planning. Where are you in the digital thread, digital model capability, not just for the big suppliers too, but also for the small ones. And you and I have also talked about the fact that Connecticut has a ton of resources for our small, mid-sized manufacturers along Industry 4.0 or the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. I know you've been really applaud the government role, both at the state level and federal level, their support for Sikorsky, but also for the supply chain. So that's great that we have those resources. A lot of states don't make that type of investment. So if any supplier need help that our Sikorsky folks, reach out to obviously Sikorsky or reach out to us at CBIA, and we'll put you in touch with the chief manufacturing officer with all those programs that we have.
Yeah, Paul, that's good, Chris.
There's a couple that are similar, so I'll just kind of combine them. And it's about those who aren't current suppliers. So first, is Sikorsky even onboarding new suppliers? And if so, what's the best way? Some OEMs, have a portal. So some OEMs, it's reaching out to the supply chain group. So are you onboarding new suppliers, and what would be the best way for a new supplier to connect with Sikorsky?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, on any new program, the spectrum is open to lots of new suppliers. So, as we are working on that FARA program, we've been talking to suppliers, new and existing. I mean, obviously, listen, we don't just, walk away from our current suppliers, but we don't also automatically go back there. I mean, any new platform we go out, we want to see what's out there on the market. We'll run competitions to select those suppliers. So for things like FARA, even to a lesser extent, the 53K, some of that's locked in now, but some of it isn't. we're open to new suppliers. But we're also open, even on something like the Blackhawk, to second sourcing, parts. Now, the challenge comes in there is how do we pay, collectively to bring on a new supplier. Typically, there's some non-recurring engineering or qualification that has to go on. But I think it's worth a discussion. If somebody, can become a competitive second source supplier for a part, for a Blackhawk, for example, and they can make a business case on how many aircraft we think we have to go to produce, then we're all in on that. We want to have competition in the supply base, and we want to, open it up to new suppliers as well. How do they do that? Reaching out, to our supply chain. We have a portal, but also, we can make available some points of contact for people to reach out to.
Okay, we'll get that portal link out to folks, or we'll put it in the chat box before we hang up, Paul. I'll make sure the folks get that. And Paul, just kind of on the supply chain side, there's another one before I get to that question is, are there certain processes, areas or products that you guys are really, hurting for, that you really want, you talked about where you want the future of the supply chain to go, but today, some processes that you look for? I know you guys are starting to do a lot more composite in-house, or at least, there's a demand on the composite side, but why don't you take that question wherever you want it to go?
Yeah, probably a couple areas I'd mention. The most challenging and longest lead processes right now, well, always have been castings and forgings. As I get educated from our operations team, castings are an ancient process, thousands of years old, and it's still as much art as it is science. It's not as repeatable. So, we're always looking for new suppliers there that can perform well. And forging's a little bit more, exacting process there, but they tend to be long lead, and we still have some challenges in the supply base. So I know those are sort of, basic metal processing steps, but they're critical to what we do. Then I would say additive manufacturing. So we're hoping to replace castings and forgings in the future with additively manufactured parts. It absolutely is possible today, but on a very small scale. We need to get up to parts probably 4 or 5 feet by 5 feet. So, very large parts that could be additively manufactured in titanium or aluminum or other metals. But again, it's coming along. It will get there. Again, today we can produce smaller parts out of those metals with different processes. So additively manufactured parts is a big deal for us. We do some in-house, but we want suppliers to be investing and coming along with us, and then they'll get the work to produce these parts. So those are probably some of the big items, because what we produce in this factory are all the dynamic systems, all the rotating machinery, and a lot of that is metal that gets precision machined to the thousandth or millionth of an inch here in our shops. But it starts with getting those rough forgings or castings or parts in from supply base. Then there's a whole host of actuators, hydraulic and electric actuators, and things of that nature that we source as well as sheet metal components and just different parts of the aircraft.
A lot there, and if you guys got a lot in the factory, so obviously looking for a supply chain that could mirror that, and that's a very robust supply chain. And along the line, staying with the supply chain, Paul, there was a question around the fact that you guys are part of Lockheed, and if a supplier is doing business with Sikorsky, is there an opportunity for them to do business with Lockheed? And as an old UTC, GE, Rolls-Royce supplier back in the day myself, I always found that there was obviously walls in between the organizations. They each have their own supply chains. Sometimes they even have their own requirements, although they're one part of one big parent company. How does it work with Lockheed? If you've got a current supplier looking to do business with Lockheed, is there a pass through Sikorsky, or does it kind of a different direction?
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. We have, these corporate councils for supply chain where we discuss good and bad suppliers. So if you're really high performing, it's likely that you're brought up in there and the other business areas hear about it. If you're a poor performer, it's likely you're brought up there and other business areas hear about it, and unfortunately may or may not call you up in that case. So that's one way that it happens. But for the rest in the middle, or anybody that's interested in doing business, if you're doing business with us and you say, hey, I'd like to find out about opportunities in the rest of Lockheed Martin, please ask your contact point here at Sikorsky how that can happen. It definitely can. You just probably need to push us a little bit there, and we can make those connections for you and make that happen.
Makes sense. So folks are curious about the supply chain. So let's stay on this topic, Paul. It could go in a variety of ways. I'll take the bottom one first because it's kind of a nice continuum of what we're talking about, and that's the cybersecurity challenge. Is that a challenge for your suppliers? Are you supporting suppliers with cybersecurity? Obviously, we've talked a lot about CMMC over the past several years and the flow down from the government with the cybersecurity maturity model. So why don't you talk just briefly about what you expect to see in your supply chain relative to cybersecurity? And if there's any
no, it is always a concern, and every new program that gets competed by our customers has stricter and stricter cybersecurity standards. On the FEL programs, they have CMMC as a major requirement. We have to be a certain level, and that's not just us, that's down into the supply chain. And we view that as a risk because we know not everyone in the supply chain is investing as heavily as we are in cybersecurity. So we do offer, again, to work with our supply chain partners and help them out to get up to a certain standard on cybersecurity, so that they can work with us, particularly on programs that have that requirement. And as I said, a lot of the new programs like Future Vertical Lift and any of those are going to have those requirements for cybersecurity, because we all know the easiest way. A lot of our adversaries know that a Lockheed Martin or a Raytheon, et cetera, are going to have fairly good cyber defenses. We spend a lot of money on that. So the way they want to get in is through a supply base. They'll hack into the supplier, hoping that they have a portal into Lockheed Martin to get to us. That's usually how it works. And so that's why we and the government are so very focused on ensuring that the entire supply chain is cyber hardened, not just us here at Sikorsky.
Yeah, and again, to the folks on the video here, a lot of resources out there. The Manufacturing Innovation Fund has a subsidy program for those folks looking to do a cybersecurity assessment, and then obviously figure out where your gaps are to close those gaps. Because we've heard from Paul and certainly other OEMs that that's where the supply chain needs to be. It's not an easy challenge, but you need to do it. So look for those state resources to help you in that. And kind of, Paul, on the cybersecurity, but this question is really around IT in general. Is with the demand for IT resources, and we talk a lot about hiring and manufacturing and other industry sectors, IT is a sector that's really been moving around a lot of talent around and really hiring is and Sikorsky's commitment to Industry 4.0 and technology. Is there a challenge for Sikorsky to find IT or tech folks, if you will? And if there is there an opportunity for third-party professional IT folks to do business with Sikorsky on an indirect basis?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. First, our IT work is centralized at the corporate level, and it's all managed by them. That's not to say that we don't have a lot of local IT people. We do, but the staffing, the investments in terms of tools and computers and so forth is all determined, by our IT leadership at the corporate level. Honestly, we haven't. My response to is it difficult to recruit talent? I'm going to broaden to technical at large, and mainly in my mind, I'm thinking about the engineering talent that we need to design and build helicopters. And we're fortunate, Chris. We don't have a big challenge recruiting here in Connecticut. There's a lot of good schools. A lot of people want to work for us. And the good news is we have a low attrition rate, so they want to stay here. So we, look, there's some special skill sets where we might have a little bit of a challenge, recruiting for, but generally, we can get the engineers we need. And then I'll say the same thing about the hourly labor force here. Generally, pretty good at capturing that, but there again, there's some specialized skill sets, some really advanced machining skill sets that we need, and we're always looking for. So if anybody can bring those to us, please do. We have openings. We're always hiring for machinists. So there's just certain skill sets we need, but in general, we don't have a big problem recruiting.
Yeah, and you said that for a little bit of time now since you've been in Connecticut. You're a relatively newbie, but you've certainly entrenched yourself in the state moving here. That I've heard you talk to several different groups about the fact that you're able to find the talent, and as challenging as the workforce crisis is in the state right now, you have developed great partnerships, primarily in the area down there, where you've been able to being able to develop and bring in the talent. And I think it's important for folks to know, Paul, sometimes the media only focuses on one side of the story and not the other, that you guys continue to hire. You guys continue to look for talent down there at Sikorsky.
Yeah, we do. And I know we had a small reduction in force earlier this year, but we have specialized skills that we continue to hire for. And we also make it a point to hire some amount of new college graduates every year to keep the workforce. You don't want to have a gap in your workforce that 10 years from now you look back and you say, oh, for 2 or 3 years, we didn't hire anybody. And so we sort of have this gap in the middle. We've learned our lesson many years ago on that. And so typically every year, unless we're in dire straits, I mean, we're going to be hiring college grads. And then, as I said, we're always looking for some specialized skills.
Great to see that commitment. So, Paul, we've answered all the questions. I'll let you kind of close us out with the final words that you want people to walk away with. But let me just again thank you, the Sikorsky family, the Sikorsky supply chain, for everything you guys do. It's great to see that the future is still bright, and everyone's got their head held up high, obviously. And you guys, as I said in the opening, are a significant player here in the state. Your supply chain is significant. For folks that don't know, who aren't in the manufacturing world, for every one manufacturing job created, you support about 4 or 5 other jobs. I know your union spends local, buys local, right? They're eating at the local restaurants, they're shopping at the local retail places, probably getting their clothes cleaned locally. And that's really important for the Connecticut economy. The things that CBIA advocates for is growing the economy by growing jobs, growing the population. So thank you for all you guys do. And why don't you just give us some kind of walkaway words for the suppliers on the call and for everybody else?
Sure. And Chris, as I said earlier this year, after we were notified we didn't win that FLRAA program, one program loss is not going to define the future of Sikorsky. It's certainly important. We have plans in place to, work around that and continue the legacy of Blackhawk for many years, as well as win new programs. And so, we can't do any of that without the supply base, of which much of it is in Connecticut. So I really look forward to continuing to work with all of you out there. Thanks for what you're doing for us day in and day out and delivering critical supplies to us. And, reach out if we can help you be a better supplier. So thanks.
Thanks, Paul, again for your leadership. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Very insightful, informative, and the future is bright here in Connecticut for Sikorsky and for the state as a whole. Stay well, Paul. Great to see you again.
Thanks, Chris.